Demo day, hip hip hooray, it's demo day. Don't you love sprint demo day? I love sprint demo day. Sprint demo day is so much fun. I'm going to keep calling it demo day until about midway through this episode, and I'm going to change the name of the sprint demo, but that's okay. Hey, thanks again for joining. This is Scott at Planet Product Owner. Really happy to have you in today. A little bit of housekeeping here, and just to kind of give you, some of you new listeners, what we do here. We talk about really about thinking patterns more than anything as it relates to being on your journey of being a product owner. I'm hoping that you're becoming a more effective product owner. I'm hoping that you're taking some of the things that we're learning about here, discussing about on this show, and applying it to your day-to-day. I really hope that you're able to give me some feedback as well, particularly if you joined us early and the audio was really crummy. I think the audio has gotten a lot better lately. I think, we may have a couple of episodes here that are kind of out of kilter, but by and large, I think the audio is improving on this. I really hope that you guys are enjoying the content, that you're applying some of the thinking patterns that we're talking about, because that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about thinking patterns. We're talking about the art of being a product owner. I've gotten a lot of great feedback, Scott at planetproductowner.org, from all over the world, not just the country, not just USA. So this thing is kind of a global listenership now, and I really do appreciate that. I would ask, though, that if you send me some information or send me some feedback or some comments or some questions or topics, if you would, just make sure you put your name and your town. And I say town, I may actually mean your country and anywhere close to where you are, I guess. That would be great, because I have feedback from all across the place, all across the world. So, in any event, here we are. We're talking about demo day today. I'm really hoping that for product owners, for scrum masters, for organizational leaders, for the team, whichever category or classification or role that you fall into while you're listening to this, I really hope that today's episode is going to bring you something new, because we have journeyed a lot, right? We've talked about stories, we've talked about responsibilities, we've talked about hats and perspectives and lenses and all of that in some of those older previous episodes, and we built on our journey. But today I want to do something a little bit different, a little bit fun, and I think over the next few episodes we're going to dive into more of these ceremonies and how to make them a little bit more effective, and how the product owner and the scrum master both can work together to make these more effective. So sit tight, hang on, we're getting ready to journey to Planet Product Owner. So is this a mindset, a methodology, whichever it is, it doesn't matter. I think the principles behind what we do in an agile or lean delivery shop is that we are not running by the traditional sense of doing these check-the-box routine type events. And my fear is that for a lot of product owners, we turn the sprint demo into a check-the-box event. And what we should recognize here is that when we're talking about empirical processes, we're talking about inspecting and adapting. We're talking about it all, not just, how we write stories or how the team moves from one point to the other or how to size it or how to, all of those things. We're talking about ceremonies too. And if you're not inspecting and adapting your ceremonies, then really you're kind of doing a disservice to promoting, that agility that you're really wanting to seek. Okay, that's your goal. So here we go. I've talked about the sales demo, show me, showcase, whatever it is. One thing I want to point out to you today before I get into these 5 things that I want to tell you about the sprint demo, to challenge you to support them, promote them, incorporate them, however you want to use that term. I want to just kind of set this up. So I've told you before, I've got 4 girls, right? My older 2 who are out there in college, they're on their way. I told them when they were younger, growing up, and I'm getting there to my 3rd one now to get these kinds of conversations going, that number 1, everything is a sales job. You're selling something when you come into contact with somebody. The second thing is that you're always on a job interview. It's kind of the way that I want them to be prepared for their life. I want them to know that you're always on a job interview and that everything is a sale. Okay? This sprint demo or showcase or team show or showtime at the team name, whatever it is that you're going to do with this ceremony, it's really important for us to not just show the users some piece of code or that something works. That's not what this is about. This is a sales opportunity for you. And it's an opportunity to do a lot of things, which we're going to talk about here in just a minute, and I want to bring those up. But now that you kind of get the basis for what I'm trying to tell you, what's the first thing you got to know about when you're in sales? Well, we've talked about this before. You got to know your target audience. You got to know your audience. And so in the sprint demo, you're going to have sponsors, you're going to have stakeholders, you're going to have development team members, you're going to have other scrum masters maybe, you're going to have platform managers or product managers, or you're going to have technical managers. The main thing that I want you to make sure you're understanding is you're trying to show the value for the first and second seat. Y'all remember the 3 seats down episode? And if you weren't fortunate enough to hear the 3 seats down episode, I would encourage you to go back and check that out, because it's worth listening to. I think got a lot of good feedback on that episode, by the way. Thanks. So the value is in this for the first and second seat. Your third seat, you've been working for getting this stuff out the door or getting it to showtime. But the first and second is really where you want to show that value. You got to know that audience, okay? Now, I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here before we go into the 5 things I want to share with you. This is not, let me tell you what a sprint demo is not, okay? You can do whatever you want to, but I hope it's not becoming a check-the-box kind of routine event that you just have to get through, because, oh my God, those things are so boring. And I can tell when teams are when they're not inspecting and adapting their ceremonies, when they're not updating maybe the format to their sprint demos, I can tell when they never touch that in their retros. They never touch that topic, because it is the most boring show on earth. I mean, it's like, and for me, it's not that I have short attention span. It's just that I really like to walk away from something with some thought, with some thought behind it. So I'm hoping we can get you that. But the point I'm trying to make is that this is not a code review. Now, there may be a time where you do a sprint demo, and you have some really code-heavy stuff in there for your code review. Like, for example, it's the first time you've ever put your company or your software or your product or whatever in the cloud. Okay, that's probably worth demoing, right? If it is the latest and greatest technology of your integration layer or your communication or some adapter or something that translates some big bang thing, okay, I could see where you do a code review there in your sprint demo, but you're still got to make sure that you're showing the benefit to your target audience in that sprint demo. That's your users, your sponsors, your stakeholders, whatever it is. Remember, I told you, if you got money, you got problems, right? You have to make sure that you're solving the problem and that you're communicating with the people on there. This is how we've solved your problem. Okay. So now that I'm going to get off of that, we don't care about the eloquence of your code. We don't care about just going through and seeing a SOAP request or seeing some kind of call between this system and that system. Nobody cares about that. At the end of the day, they want to know, what does this thing do? How did we address this thing? Because remember, we talked about changed or updated functionality in software. Well, sure, the back end and the code and all that stuff kind of qualifies for that, but the users aren't using that part. Let's focus on what the users are using, guys. So now that I'm over that, we want to make sure that your iteration or your sprint or your time box work effort here, that the team is meeting the sprint goal, right? We talked about the sprint goal or the sprint theme, and that's what we're really wanting to support in our demo. So let's talk a little bit about that. We've already touched on the first one. The first one is, what do we want to show in this showtime event, in this demo? We want to show the value. We want to show the value of the work. That's that's the top thing, right? We want to show the value. So I'll give you an example. You may have just changed a drop down to a radio button set, or you may have just changed the way that someone navigates from here to there, or you may have put in an exception path that leads you to more business. Whatever the thing is, when you're demoing that story or that functionality, you want to make sure that you're adding the point of value to it. And it goes back to the why. Why did we do it? Does that make sense? Why? Why did we want to do that? Well, because we gained more customers. Why did we do that? Well, because we found out that some people were abandoning us on this step. Why did we do that? It's because we found out that we could attract more customers if we did this. We could raise sales. We could have a baseline measure. We could do, y'all get what I'm saying? So the value behind that is not just demo in the code or demo in the story and the functionality. Explain the why. Okay? That all contributes to your value. So here's the second thing that we want to support and promote in the demo. Progress toward the goal. You remember a long time ago I told you that I always lean toward progress. We're leaning towards progress. So as we are progressing through, whether it's incremental, iterative, waterfall, it doesn't matter. We want to show the progress towards the end state, towards the goal. And that progress should include the top level items for the value. In other words, we should be showing our progression through this so that we can show the value in there. And the idea here is that an inspect and adapt, when you think of it, that's really what we're doing. It's like a checkpoint for us in the sprint demo. So if we're showing the progress, then we should have the opportunity to inspect and adapt, right? So we've talked about the progress towards the value. We've talked about the value. Now here's the third thing that I want to make sure that you're doing in your sprint demos. Product owners, please, product owners, praise your team. This is one thing that I don't know what we do. Sometimes we just get into this lost progression of steps or check the box kind of events or something like that. And we often forget that they can't do their job without us, but we certainly can't do ours without them, right? Your credit, product owner, will come to you later after you've made the decision to release it to production. But right now the credit is theirs. You don't have to worry about getting credit. You don't get credit yet, product owner, okay? They get credit because they got you closer to the goal of getting it in the user's hands. So let's make sure that we're promoting them. One thing that, is that they're doing the work on your behalf because you're still on that balance beam between technology and business. You're eternally on that if you're in the product owner role. But one of the things about promoting your team here is that not only are you putting them up on that pedestal, right, for accomplishing the sprint goal, which I hope they did, but you're also cross-training folks in the organization, your stakeholders, your users, your sponsors, your whoever your partners are out there. Because what you're doing is you're promoting collaboration when you talk about how well the team did on reaching this sprint goal or this theme, right? So the team is the one that's getting the progress done, the progression towards the value that you are hoping to achieve out of this thing, and they're a big part of it. So don't forget them, So let's go to the fourth one. So we've talked about value, progress, and team. Now let's talk about the fourth one, transparency. Transparency is something that you have to make sure that you're incorporating into the sprint demo. Do you remember the days when you had this really big project and you were working in this traditional or waterfall or agile fall or waggle, whatever it is, in this big thing, and you had that project manager there who was like, hey, that's not a defect. Don't write that up as a defect. We've got a timeline here. Or it's, hey, you can cut that corner right there, and going through because we need to get this out to production. You remember the ones who hid all the defects? They hid the bugs. They hid the risks. They hid all this stuff because all they wanted to do was focus on timeline and budget and getting it out the door. Well, we don't have room for that. Okay, that's not what we do. We not only deliver faster, but we deliver with quality. That's why we test as we go, right? What I'm trying to make sure you understand here is that if there are risks, if there are dependencies, if there are snags, if there are things that are going on right here, this sprint demo is an opportunity for you to, first of all, show how you defeated that, or point out that it is still there. And that is okay. Now, ideal world, Scrum Master should be removing that from all of your work. Sure, I get it. But there are going to be times where your sprint plan falls totally apart. And it just falls off the face of the earth, right? And it just dies. Okay? But the idea, though, is that we don't want to hide behind any of that stuff. We don't want to put that under the rug. We've got to be able to be transparent about it, okay? Because that, again, it just promotes, some of the values of Agile, the values of Scrum, the pillars. Now, when you're being transparent there, and I'm going to show you in the next segment how I'm doing that, because I'm going to walk you through one of my sprint demos and kind of how I set it up. The idea, though, is that finally what we want to be able to talk about here and incorporate into our sprint demo is inspect and adapt. We've talked about this at great length here. Really, what does that mean? Really what that means is when you show the story and it's the first or the second seat in there that you're selling this thing to, you're selling your team, you're selling your progress, you're selling the value, you're selling the idea of transparency, all of that to reach the goal of cross-training people in the organization, making sure the ceremony that we're getting everything that we can out of the ceremony, make sure we're all on the same page, we're motivating each other, we're challenging each other, and we're getting back out there and getting it back done again in the next sprint. When we talk about inspect and adapt, one of the biggest things that you can do is solicit that feedback towards the end of that, after you demoed everything, and make sure you're asking your sponsor, your stakeholder, your user, whatever it is, hey, did we get this right? And then when they give you the feedback and they say yes or no, yes means you're on the right track. No means you need to create another story, or you need to refactor something, or you need to get back in there and show them that you're responding to change. Being responsive is really important. So make sure that when you're doing your sprint demos, you're incorporating, because this is what we're selling. We're selling value. We're selling progress towards the sprint goal or the end goal. We're selling our team. We're selling transparency. We're selling inspect and adapt. And all of those elements fundamentally that should be supported in what we're doing, that's what a sprint demo should be about, right? I mean, it's not just showing code. Please don't. It's not a code review. It's not an architecture review. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to make sure we're on the right track and to show progress, that we're leaning towards that goal, that we're getting to the end state, okay? So hang tight for the next segment, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I do and how I've coached others in their sprint demos and how I put that together, and maybe it'll help you out. So hang tight. So I hope that the previous segment helped you out. Those 5 things that you try to incorporate. Now I'm going to try to walk you through how I might do that. And so just bear with me, because I'm going to try to give you a visual in an audio in an audio medium here, I guess, if that's what we want to say. So getting to this day, this showcase or showtime day or whatever it is, a couple things that I want you to think about and consider for pre-work up to this thing. One is, on the day that you're demoing, what I have done in the past and what I'll continue to do, and I would strongly encourage you to make sure that you have someone who has volunteered or been voluntold to ensure that you have a stable environment in which to demo. That's important, right? I mean, you don't want to sit around here and wait until 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock or whatever it is and demo in an environment that is shut down. Okay, so somebody has to protect that. The environment protector, the EPA, I guess, whatever you want to call it. But somebody to make sure that environment is stable and that your users and your profiles and whatever else it is that you need in there are good. You're good to go. Okay, make sure the team is prepped and you've done a dry run. You got to make sure that you've done a dry run on that. Now, remember, I've already told you, if you're waiting until sprint demo day, product owner, to make sure that your team is doing what they're supposed to be doing, you have waited way too long. And if you have not shown your stories to someone else until sprint demo day, you're behind. Okay? Don't wait until sprint demo day to let that be the first time you've seen it. Don't let that be the first day or the first time to let your primary sponsor, stakeholder, user see it, make sure that you're getting that stuff done ahead of time, okay? Now, so that's part of that dry run that I'm telling you about. You've already seen this, or you should have already seen this. So make sure that you are, that you've had that dry run down, right? Now, the other thing that so there's kind of 3 items there in pre-work. 1 is a stable environment. 2 is to make sure that your team is prepped with some kind of dry run. The last one is finally this. And if you're listening, and I know you know who you are, who told me this years ago, a good friend of mine, you do it in Excel, you sell it in PowerPoint. Now, whatever application it is that you use for presentation or for making lists or whatever, all good. I'm not here to promote, any particular vendor or platform or solution. But I will tell you this, that selling it in some kind of presentation format is really important. Now, I'm not telling you to go out there and take screenshots and dump it into a PowerPoint. That's not what I'm asking you to do, because your demo should be live. You should be in a live working environment, okay? What I am saying, though, is that, remember, let's go back to the context of this whole thing. Your sprint demo should be a great sales opportunity for you, for your team, for progress, showing your progress towards the value that you're trying to deliver, promoting and propping up your team, making sure that we're transparent and that we're inspecting and adapting our work. Okay, so you want to capture all of that into one kind of place. And what I do is I put it into PowerPoint. So that's kind of the pre-work on your part, product owner. Now, what goes into that PowerPoint, you say? Now, let's start there. So here's what I'm going to do. When I start this call, y'all get on a call where it's like, did someone join? Ba-doo. Did someone join? Ba-doo. Did someone join? Ba-doo. Thank you. It'll only be another couple of minutes. Hey, we're going to give it until about 3 minutes after. Hey, we're going to give everybody 5 minutes. They're finishing up other things. Did someone join? Did someone join? Hey, who joined? Somebody joined and didn't announce. Oh my God, is that my boss or my boss's boss? It's like, for the love. Okay, so let's stop all that. Let me tell you a way to fix that. You ready? This is remarkable, okay? And I love this. If you're sharing like on a WebEx or a Slack or something like that, where you're sharing this demo online across the organization or across the world or whatever, just put in a countdown timer that says, that counts down from 4 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. And that way everybody knows when you're going to start. If you share that, I've done that and people absolutely love it. They love it when I just put a count. So then, hey, we're here, but here's when we're going to start this thing. Now, when I kick it off, what I'm doing is I'm giving the intro. The intro is kind of a pre-sales pitch. I'm qualifying what we're about to do here. I'm telling them, hey, look, welcome to today's showcase. We have team blah, blah, blah. This was the sprint goal. Today this is a ceremony that we participate in every X number of weeks, days, whatever our increment is, our periodic time schedule, whatever. But the point that I'm trying to make clear to the folks who are participating in this demo or in this showcase is that, first of all, this is something that we do in Scrum. This is something that we do in our Agile space and our delivery methodology or mindset. And we do it periodically so that we can check the progress of our work, be transparent, give the team credit for what they've done, and show you the value. Those 5 things that I just talked about, I'm incorporating that into my introduction. Every demo, I'm saying almost the same thing, okay? So get your little elevator speech together and put together your intro to your demo. Your welcome message, your pre-sales pitch, right? Now, the next thing I'll do is I'll say, hey, I need to prepare you because we've had some instability with some volumes that have been impacted, blah, 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 in this environment, or this environment is a little bit slower than what you would expect to see in production, or we have the buttons here and they all work, but they're not pretty yet, whatever it is, okay, that you need to do. So what I'm really trying to tell you here is that you need to make sure that you are, that you're anticipating and eliminating questions, objections, concerns, whatever. You need to do that up front, because if you wait until you stumble upon that user that has been locked out, or that module that will give you an error message when it's not supposed to because some other endpoint is down or whatever. If you anticipate and eliminate those concerns, those objections, or whatever it is, and you just be transparent about it and say, don't wait until you stumble upon an error and then say, oh, well, we'll have to check on that. No, that's not going to fly, man. You are selling this. You can't sell something when you stumble upon something that's broken and you're not ready for that. Don't do that. Product owners, that's bad. Okay? That is bad. Y'all remember I told you, that you want to make sure you're keeping your front porch clean? Keep your front porch clean. Run through this thing through a dry run. If you've got an error and you're not supposed to have an error, you can't identify it as an environmental issue or a performance issue or whatever, you better make sure they fix that crap before you go in there and show it. Because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. Now, you could work around it, but you at least want to be aware of it. I mean, even if they're not able to fix it, that's fine. You just got to tell them, hey, we currently have an issue that is, under investigation with this story. All right. Does that make sense? So anticipate and eliminate concerns and objections with this spiel that you just went into, okay? Prep them for that. So now I've given you kind of the pre-sales pitch, whatever, the intro for your sprint demo. Now let's talk about what I include in the visual aid. The first thing that I include is, some kind of information relative to the incremental goals or objectives that we have. So some people work on just pure iteration goals. Some work off of some larger incremental, like a semester or a quarter or a program increment or whatever it is that you're doing, okay? So I'll list those out and just kind of give an update and speak to that on each one. And I tell my folks who are on the demo, I say, look, I'm giving you some information that the team itself is working on all of these journeys or all of these designs or all of these pieces of software or all of these changes. But today's sprint goal that we're going to cover, which is my next slide, sprint goal. This is what we had. This was our sprint goal, and this is what we committed to for this iteration. Now, in that, I'll take a screenshot of Rally or Jira or ServiceNow or whatever it is that we're putting our stories into, and I'll just take a screenshot of that. I'll pop it into that on top of the sprint goal slide, and I'll say, this is what the team decided to do in order to reach the sprint goal. We're going to talk about their progress to that as we go through today's showcase. Okay. Now, the next thing that I'll do, and guys, if you're not doing this, I would recommend doing it, and just for a couple of psychological issues or reasons, I guess. The next thing that I always do, and it kind of frustrates people, to be honest, but it does put them on notice. I put my burn down chart in there. Now, I know that some people are like, ooh, wait a minute, why are you doing that? Well, remember, I'm trying to cross-train everybody, right? I'm trying to make sure everybody understands the point of this exercise and what we're really doing here. We committed to this body of work that was broken down into these selected stories. And the idea that we're trying to promote, and some of you are working better in Agile, some of you are not. Some of you are working better in Scrum, some of you are not. So think about the psychological impact that you're going to have if you put a picture of your burn down chart in your presentation, in your demo, in your sales pitch. What you're telling the world, you're telling your team, you're telling yourself is that you waterfalled the crap out of that, or that you had some scope creep that you had to adjust for, or the team is outperforming, or the team is underperforming, or the team is flatlining, or the team is on track and doing what they're supposed to be doing ahead of the sprint goal. You understand what I'm saying? Now, I'll take the opportunity in that to show them that the diagonal line is ideal. I'll put an arrow on the one that shows what we, where we tracked and how we burn those points. And then I'll put some explanation to spikes or drags or whatever we're doing. And obviously, if we're not finished, I'll put a note in there saying why not. It's either finishing later today or refactoring, retesting, or whatever the case is, okay? But the idea is cross-train them on your process. Cross-train them on the things that make this thing work for us. And that's going to go a long way, because what you're doing then is you are anticipating and eliminating questions and concerns. If you think about it and you're trying to explain to somebody who has never hung a kitchen cabinet before, You're trying to tell them that they need a level, or they need to put a support block underneath it. They don't know what the crap you're talking about, So, I mean, keep in mind, you're trying to sell this thing to people who have no idea what your language is. All they want to know is, when is it going to be delivered to production? That's all they care about. You know it as I know it. All they care about is, what's the date, right? So let's put some cross-training in there and help them understand why we're different, why we're delivering faster with more quality. Emphasize the fact that you are testing as you're going. Use this time wisely, guys. Don't just use this demo to check a box and move on. Now, let's go to the next one. I rambled a little bit there, sorry. After the burn down chart, then what I'll do is I'll put a... This is so funny, y'all. Have y'all ever seen the meme of or the little picture of like the little girl who's looking at the camera, and then there's like a house or a building or something just engulfed in flames in the background? And she's just kind of looking at the camera, almost a smirk or a grin, I put this picture up there, and I've made a meme out of it, and I put this into my slide when it's time to show my stories. And I'll say, time for a live demo. What could go wrong? So, I mean, tasteless, maybe, I don't know. But do something fun, man. Do something fun right there. Explain to them that, hey, we're about to do a live demo, and here it goes, right? I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But you already know what's going to happen because you have been prepared, product owner. Your team has already done a dry run through this, product owner. You have nominated and someone has been assigned to make sure your environment is stable, product owner. You know you've got the right users to test with. You've got the right scenarios there. You're showing pre-post and precondition and post-condition and triggers, and you're explaining what the value is and why you're progressing towards the goal. You're promoting your team. You're being transparent about risk and about issues and about what's happening. You're collecting feedback from them at the end of this spiel so that you can inspect and adapt your work. And you realize all of that stuff because you have been listening to me. Now, I'm fired up now. I love sprint demos. So I'll introduce story time. Now, sometimes in story time, guys, I'll be honest with you, sometimes in story time, especially if it's a new team, I'm demoing those stories. I'm not letting a developer do that, and I'll tell you why. Not the first couple of times, because I want to make sure they're selling it. You've got to sell it. You've got to sell the value. It can't be about, well, we put in this controller here, and this controller, and this MVC, and this component points back, and if we change this view right here, and here's the SQL database table. Nobody cares about that in a demo. That does not add value to the user, okay? You're talking about user value, not code eloquence, not just because I can build the fanciest thing out here, okay? It's not what it's about. It's about the user and usability. Usable, potentially shippable code, which ends up being in the user's hands, and that's the perspective we're looking for, okay? Address the preconditions, postconditions, and triggers that were so important in the why of the story. Because if you leave out a couple of those scenarios, or you leave out a couple of those exception paths, or you leave out a couple of those alternate flows that you may have coded in some of your use cases or some of your stories or whatever, that's where you're going to get your questions, guys. So make sure that you're addressing those. Remember what I've said. Anticipate and eliminate objections and questions. If you start thinking critically about what questions your audience will have about this sprint demo, you are going to conclude what you need to cover. Okay? You've got to think about it critically, though, okay? So I'm going to give... So then after we go through our stories, that's a live demo. We're selling them on the why. We're showing them why we did it. We're showing them what the benefit and the value is to the user. We're showing you how easy this crap is to do, whatever it is, okay? Notice I've only spent like a small portion of this segment talking about demoing the story. All the rest of this stuff is working around your demo, your ceremony, what it takes to pull this thing off. But see, the paradigm is different for a lot of us in a product owner role. We want to check the box and focus on demoing the stories, and that's really all we want to do, and we want to walk away from it and go back to work to sprint planning. This is an opportunity for you to help everybody understand what it is you're doing in your world. Help them understand just how valuable and beneficial this team is in this methodology, because we're delivering things faster. We're working better. We're delivering it with more quality. It's a perfect opportunity for you to sell that and to pitch that to everybody there who's on board with your sprint demo. Right? So, hang tight. I'm going to send you a final segment here. And this final segment is going to help you with a couple of quick questions, maybe some insight behind why I'm so passionate about what it is that we're doing with this, and maybe a couple of questions just to finish up on, okay? So, hang tight. Well, I sure hope I didn't run off the entire listener audience with that last segment. So, no, I know I'm not, but you guys know how passionate I am about some things, right? And so I just want to make sure that we're taking the opportunity that we have with some of these ceremonies to leverage getting better, leverage working better, working with more quality. Some of these things that we talked about promoting are really important. Now, I do want to close with a couple of things here. So, one question came up about, when do you allow, your folks or your participants, I guess, in the demo to ask questions? I've always been a fan of holding questions to the end, because if you're the product owner, you have already anticipated and eliminated the questions and concerns, right? You already know what it is they're going to ask you about. Well, what happens if it's this kind of user? Well, that's one of your preconditions, right? So you should have already addressed that in your story time, okay? What happens if we click this button here and we get an error message? Well, here's the error message, guys. That's in your exception path of your story. That's in your scenario. So you probably already covered that, right? Well, what if they don't really have rights to... You've already got that, right? So you should be covering your pre-condition, your trigger, your post-condition, all of those sets in your scenarios with your stories. And you've already thought through ahead of time of your sprint demo what questions that this guy... There's always a Billy. Billy is always... There's always Billy. And I don't know anybody named Billy, but I'm just going to say Billy. There's always a Billy. Billy is always in your sprint demo, and he's always asking questions that you've already talked about and you've already covered. You have to cover those over the top with Billy, right? So get ahead of Billy. Get in front of Billy. Make sure that you got Billy. In fact, put Billy on your dang share care time if you have to make sure that make sure you're covering Billy's bases, okay? Because Billy's got bases to cover. Cover Billy's bases ahead of the game, right? So I leave them to the end. I leave questions until the end, because chances are we're going to answer them, right? But here's the one thing that I want you to make sure that you're doing, though, product owner. When you get those questions, even if they ask you questions in the middle, so Billy's always going to be on the call. Remember, I told you about Billy the questioner, or Billy the, the contrary, whatever. He's going to say, well, what happens if this, and I'll tell Billy, hey, Billy, listen, first, thank you for your question. Okay. Thank you reward the question. Thank you for your question. It's a great question. If you would, just hang on to that thought, because I think we're going to answer it here pretty soon. And if we don't, make sure that by the end of this, before we get off the phone, that we talk about it. Okay? So reward the question. Hold the question. Guarantee him, or at least say, hey, we're going to answer that, okay? But the other thing that I want you to think about is not just rewarding the question, but let's follow up on that when we're talking about rewarding the question and questioning to the void, which we've already talked about that one too in a previous episode. I hope you remember that one. As adults, we don't ever really ask the right questions, do we? It's a lot like kids. And I know this is a whole other episode that I might be able to dive into at some point with you guys, but again, we're talking about the art, and I don't want to leave without talking about these two things, about rewarding the question, holding the question, and making sure that we're answering the question. But I'm going to give you a quick story, and I promise I'm not going to be long here. My 13-year-old daughter asks me pretty much every Thursday or Friday night, and sometimes even like Saturday morning, whenever she decides to roll out of bed, she says, hey, what are our plans for Sunday? Or what are our plans for Saturday? And I'm thinking, You don't care what our plans are. You want to know if you can go to the movie theater at 2 o'clock, or if you can go bowling with your friends, or whatever it is, okay? So just ask me the question for the information you're seeking. Don't ask me a question like that, you know? Because we do that as adults, right? We do that as adults too. Hey, what are y'all doing Saturday night? Really what I want to know is, y'all, are you guys open to coming over and playing cards at 6? Right? I mean, I don't really care what you're doing. I mean, so sometimes we ask questions and we don't get the information that we're really looking for when we ask the question. So I would pose it like this. Think of it as, why are they asking the question, first of all, and make sure that you're addressing that. But finally, what I would say is this about that. The point that I'm trying to make here is that when you get those questions that are held to the end of your sprint demo or your showcase or your showtime, you want to go back and you want to ask them, not did we answer your question? That's not what we want to know. We want to know, did we give you the information you needed? 'Cause that's a whole different question, right? Because if I say, did I answer your question? Sure, I answered your question. Answered your question. We're going to the beach Saturday morning. I'm going to play golf at 2, and then I'm going to be back and put something on the grill by 6. That's the answer to my kid, right? Really what she wants to know is, can I work into my schedule to take her somewhere? So it's the same thing with adults, guys. Same thing. You get 3 or more adults in a room together, treat them like kids. I've heard that my whole life, my whole adult life in this business. But the idea is that these open questions, did we give you the information you needed? What information are you missing based on what we covered? Don't say, did we answer your question? Because you're always going to answer their question because they don't know how to ask the question, and you may not know how to answer it. So make sure you're giving them the information that they needed. So today we have talked about a lot of stuff. We have talked about the sprint demo. We've kind of gone through an outline. You may have to listen to this again to understand it, I know, but I'm happy to do it for you. So let's run down the 5 things again. We want to show value. We want to show progression towards the value. We want to promote the team. We want to promote transparency, and we want to make sure that we are inspecting and adapting in the sprint demo. This is not a check-the-box kind of ceremony, and we need to make sure that we're taking full advantage of what it is that we can offer and what we can take from our participants in this time. So I hope this was helpful today, guys. Y'all enjoy your afternoon. Sorry it was so late for getting this one out. I missed my timer. That's on me, and I'll fix that going forward. But until next time, have a safe, fun, lean journey, my friends.